it comes to job titles, they are strong influencers of everything that happens for our candidates on the other side, and then we have to do better. So today, that's my goal. By the end of this session, I promise you, you are going to know how to pick the right job title. What should go out to the world? And before we jump into the how, I just want to tell you a little bit about why I picked job titles out of the whole thing. And it's because I spent a lot of time in my life chasing job titles. I want you to type yes in the chat if you've changed jobs to get a promotion, to get a senior, whatever, to get a director X, right? I think we've all been there before, or you can quietly nod your head too. That works for me. But the big moment for me when I realized that most job titles are completely made up is when I created my first business card. So I run this company. It's called 3 Ears Media. And I still remember it was almost 3 years ago to the day that I started this company. And I was ordering my business cards, right? So I opened the site. I start to type in all of my details, my first name, my last name, right? I'm filling in all those blanks. And then I get to title. And wait a minute. I'm the boss. What am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to call myself? Supreme Galactic Commander was on my short list. I jokingly said I could be like the CEO of Banana Hammock if you're a fan of Friends. And ultimately, I kind of had this moment of realization, and that job titles are completely made up. I spent all this time around my whole career trying to jump to the next title and work my way up and elevate my career, only to figure out that all of it was some little magic show behind the scenes, that there was some person literally just picking job titles out of a hat. At one point, I was a ninja, so I know they were making that stuff up. And there had to be a better way. And so that is why I wanted to present that to you today and what I want to teach you how to do. Because if you don't know how to do this is the first step that you absolutely need to write a better job posting, because we'll never find your job post if you don't get the title right. So I've casually introduced myself, but I want to give you the formal introduction now if you're sitting through this. And I'd encourage you to take a screenshot of this slide because you might want my contact information after this if you have questions. So my name is Katrina Kibben. I am the founder of a company called 3 Ears Media, and we teach recruiters to write. We do that in a few different ways. We sit on presentations and do trainings just like this with teams. We also create job libraries, and that's what we were just talking about with Courtney. We do all the writing for you, and it's a lot of fun to take people's lives and their stories and translate them into really amazing candidate activation content. And so today, I'm not going to lecture you the whole time. I promised you live research, live job titles. And so I really hope that you have a job that you're struggling to fill in hand, or a job that a lot of people have applied to that weren't qualified. I'm going to show you how to test. I'm going to show you how to select and why you should pick it. And all the tools are absolutely free. So I want to start with why job titles matter. Seems important enough, right? Let's dig into that a little bit more. I want to talk about the difference between internal and external job titles because it comes up every single time. We're going to dial into the data behind why guessing is a mistake. And finally, how to pick the right job title A to Z. Every tool, every step. And I already have some windows open to show you an example. All right, why do job titles matter? Okay, first and foremost, if no one is searching for your job, no one's finding it. Period. I still remember the day I was working with a forester and they're hiring, no joke, forestry. I've done every kind of job posting at this point, but these people maintain power lines in the woods. Yes, that's a real job. And they posted a job as a utility forester. And we did this research that I'm about to show you. We figured out that's also a Subaru, and that's why they weren't getting search volume. So if that doesn't prove the point, I don't think anything will. 2, your job title has influence on how you market that job. You can't post marketing jobs in a big sales job board. It doesn't quite make sense. And so you have to know that that job title tells you a story without necessarily conveying all of the details. And finally is the story we tell ourselves. Who here would apply to a job for an associate recruiter if you are currently a director of recruiting? You don't even have to put it in the chat. I know the answer is absolutely not. We see ourselves in a certain way. We know our value. We know where we should be, or at least we have some concept of what our job title should be. And ultimately, that is the first and most important influencer that will decide if we're going to click on that posting at all, let alone actually apply. And often where we get that job title wrong is that we post the internal title instead of the external title, because list off a million reasons here. One of my favorites to clap back on is when a manager tells me, well, I don't want anyone inside my team to see this. What? If you have someone who's qualified for this job on your team, you should probably have shown that to them before it ever went on the internet. And let me just clarify that just real quick, right? Here's the other piece. Nobody wants to be a number 2. Yes, that's a poop joke. So think about it. Like, you do not get online and search software engineer 2, recruiter 2. And I get it. It's your internal title, but it's not what people search. And so I'd strongly encourage everyone on this call to commit to posting external job titles using the methodology that we're about to go through. And no, you don't just get to pick another name out of the hat. No more ninjas, right? Because guessing is a mistake. And I will not argue that with anyone here because I know it's a mistake. So I would love for you to play along a little bit with me here on the guessing game. And this is the last time you're allowed to guess about job titles ever again. Which job title do you think gets the most traffic? I want you to just type one word. It's either office assistant or administrative assistant. So what I want you to type in the chat is office or administrative. Which one gets almost more than 10 times the searches of the other one? And the second I start seeing those through, I will start to tell you what the answer is. Is it office or administrative? Which word gets searched the most? I love it. I love it. We have a bunch coming in for everything. I'm seeing a few more administrative. And the reason I bring this up as an example is because if you asked me walking down the street, casually talking about job titles, like I guess, and you asked me, what's the difference between an office assistant and an administrative assistant? I'd probably tell you they're the exact same job. You just went down the street and got a raise. All right. Now, just to be clear, I've had that clarified for me before if anyone's feeling the urge to make the distinction between an office and administrative assistant. But the difference does not necessarily lie in the work. It lies in the search volume. So anyone who guessed administrative assistant, give yourself a pat on the back, have an extra piece of candy off of your desk because you got it right. What you're looking at right now shows you the search volume for each of these job titles. And I don't know about you, but if I'm looking for a role where I need the best applicant, and let me tell you, as an executive, I can tell you how much that administrative assistant matters. I would want to post the administrative assistant job all day, every day. But here's the catch. Search volume is not the only criteria in which we are going to select job titles. So now that we kind of have this thought of how it works, let me show you exactly what we're going to do. All right, take another screenshot. This is your how-to. I'm also going to provide a download that will help you do this. And then we're going to start practicing. So I'm going to talk you through it. Then we're going to look at the screen and we'll walk through it specifically. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to Google the job title you're using right now and the word resume. Then we'll click on the image search results. There you will find, ta-da, millions of resumes. I know, everybody makes it sound so hard. So you go through and preview those resumes very quickly in that same 3-second scan that you might do if you got 100 resumes for a job. I want you to do the quick scan to see if you would hire those people. The second thing that you're scanning for are alternative job titles. Let me be explicit about what I mean by alternative. Alternative means alternative spelling, alternative abbreviations, alternative additions like senior or lead, right? Every single word you add to that job title changes the search string, just like it would change the results of a Google search. I want you to find 3 to 5 alternatives. And then we're going to use a free tool called Google Trends to compare that traffic. So I want to give the caveat because there's always a but, which is one part, the most beautiful aspect of recruiting, if you ask me, right? Like, I love that it's a little different for everyone and that this job is a little different for every person and they can find some place where they really, really belong. On the other hand, it makes trying to give rules like this really hard. So I want you to keep this in mind. If your role is hyper specialized, they only work in SQL, it's okay to call them a SQL database administrator, right? We don't need to make a really generic title just to get a bunch of people there, especially at first. That's an alternative that you can test later, but start with the title that's specific to your hyper-specialized role. Next, if you have a unique industry that I know nothing about, and that's just what we call it. I believe the other day we were talking about penetration testing in cybersecurity, right? That's what it's called. You're allowed to use that in that hyper unique industry. But in general, I personally have banned the word penetration from any job posting and especially from the job titles. And finally, the new specialty or role. So if this is the first time you're ever hiring this role, you know that there are only 100 in the country and they all go by that title. What I'm about to show you is not going to help you. It's not going to give you more detail. I would actually suggest if you have worked or you are working on one of these 3 types of roles that you go talk to someone who already has the job, whether they work for your company or they're just out in the world and you're sourcing. Maybe go and have some conversations that aren't based on the premise that you need to hire them right that second, and start to engage them about what those titles could be, what other job titles they've had, and really start to learn the role. You don't have to get so caught up in all of these specific how-tos. You need to remember there's a person on the other side. And ultimately, the job title you want to use is the job title they're going to search. All right. So before I jump into the how-to, this is your last screenshot that you'll want to take, because if you missed any of the step-by-step or you want to have your own step-by-step in your pocket for the next time you're researching a job title, this free workbook will not only teach you the job title, but it'll teach you everything that I know about writing job postings. It'll give you that high-level perspective that'll give you a head start in actually creating the rest of the posting, because we know that title is just the first impression. It's literally the first scan. It's that first story they get. What happens next takes a lot more work, and you might want a resource that can help you with that. All right, so I'm going to make sure that the event organizers have that link and can share it in the chat. So don't get panicked if you haven't taken your screenshot yet, or you just started multitasking and heard free and wanted to pay attention. They will make sure that you have access to this permanently, not just today. It's always a free resource you can grab. So let me show you how this works. And in the meantime, I'd love to start seeing some job titles coming in. So if you have a job title that you brought today that you want to test, it doesn't have to be super detailed or niche. Just go ahead and share some of those job titles right now. If not, I'll do a few examples that I'm working on. So the first thing you are going to do is type in the job title right now and the word resume. HR business partner resume. Then hit enter. You'll be on the all page. Oh, I love it, Elizabeth. We got you. I'm doing HR manager. HR business partner right here. Images. Next. Ta-da. I believe this is over 1 million resumes that you can look at. I want to reiterate that you are doing the scan, the same scan that we would do if we got 100 applications. You're looking very quickly for different job titles. In this case, I noticed some people put manager at the end, for example. I'm assuming none of you can read 0.05 font. Some people spell out HR business partner. Some people spell out HR, human resources. And so, just for an example, I compared HR business partner and human resources business partner. Elizabeth, this will help you with that HR manager because I have a feeling it will work the same for you. The difference between spelling out human resources and just typing in HR is almost 3 times the search volume. So simply by making the choice human resources business partner, you can increase your volume significantly. So this is Google Trends, and we just entered those 2 titles, but you can learn so much more. The first section, just to be clear, those are scores, not traffic data. So if anyone is looking at this going, what do you mean 100 at a time? That's not what that says. Google does a score based on a variety of things, with the key indicator being search volume, so that you can compare words in this tool. That's what makes it so powerful. So they give you a score based on 0 to 100 and also a trend. What do they predict to happen next for each of those keywords? So number 1 is the score, not the traffic data. And that gives you a quick glimpse at the job that you will most likely pick. So in this case, we would pick HR business partner if volume was the one key criteria that I was struggling with. The next thing you can see is if there's any regional nuance. I can tell you with engineering jobs, there's a lot of regional nuance between the way that they title jobs on the East Coast and the West Coast. In this case, there's not as much regional nuance in that direction, but if there were, this is exactly where you'd be able to see that. The other piece is if you're hiring someone for a very specific location, you can click on that state and understand how people in that state do their assessment and how they're doing their search. Pardon me. And the last piece is what I find most interesting and enlightening, is that they show you the related queries. This is often a way to figure out if your job title might not be the right one at all. Because if you're seeing related queries that have nothing to do with the job search or that job title, you probably don't want to use that even if it's getting the most volume. And that's where we go back to that utility Forester, right? Tons of search volume. It just all went to Subaru to get those Subarus. So on that note, let's start testing your criteria and your questions. I want to make sure, that we get to touch on each of your requests. And as you see this happening, don't hesitate to ask questions, to chime in, to say, well, what about this? It's totally fine. That's why this time is here for you. And if you need anything else, any questions about the job posting, do not hesitate to plug those in as well. All right, let's start with quality sports editor. So first thing we do is validate that this could be the right title. So quality sports editor resume. And Jessica, this is for you. Jessica Caskey specifically, I imagine there's a couple of Jessicas here. So when I'm scanning these resumes, I am seeing the first one coming up. I'm just going to take some notes as we go here, is sports editor. Jessica, I'm going to be looking for comments from you to say, yeah, that's totally a comparable job. But I'm going to assume, unless you say something else. Sports editor is our first one. Sports reporter, sports anchor. And notice as much as you can actually see my screen right now, I'm doing a very quick scan, confirming that this language is very similar to the other jobs and that there are not other alternative titles that I could be using. So, assistant sports editor. I have a few here. Let's go test. All right. Just so everyone can see the home page and you actually see what you start with. I know it's going to take an extra second. That's why I prepared and made sure that we had one search term already available, so you know what you're looking at the first time you ever go over there. All right. So yes, there's always a comparison of who's more popular, Taylor Swift or Kim Kardashian. Traditionally, Taylor Swift is winning, but today it looks like Kim Kardashian did something. So that's always my fun fact before we jump in. So let's start with Jessica's first job title, Quality Sports Editor. The alternative titles that we're going to enter into this query are just Sports Editor, and Sports Reporter. Now I'm doing this on the fly, so any typos, no judgment here. All right, look at that. Now, we've entered each search term. I would be under the impression that Jessica would probably go even one layer deeper than this, having up to 5. But let's talk about what I just learned and what I see here. First thing, Sports Reporter. If you need volume on this job, my first suggestion would be to switch over to Sports Reporter, because what we're seeing is that Quality Sports Editor is not even registering on Google search, versus this Sports Reporter is bumped up to about that 50% mark. So that's exciting to see that we've already found one that's getting a decent amount of volume. So now we're going to go into that qualifier. So the first is to look at regions. And if you happen to be in one of the regions that's not represented here, you may want to go a little deeper. All you'll need to do that is just select which one you want to go deeper on. You can select Sports Reporter and see how Sports Reporter is by state. Then down here, we'll see related queries. And I want to talk you through this. This is a common thing. Don't be worried if you see things like your search result doesn't have enough data. It's okay, right? This is purely a directional, and this is going to tell you if people are searching it. Sometimes there's nothing. You might be working on a niche role, and that might be the very reason why there's just not a lot of search volume registered. But with this related query, we went with Sports Reporter, and we see that their other search is Sports Reporter Jobs, Observer Reporter. I think we're on track. So my recommendation to you as far as that job title, Jessica, is to go with the Sports Reporter job. All right. So I'm going to keep scanning, keep moving through these. Client Service Representative. That's a very common job that I feel like a lot of people will be hiring. And then I will jump over to one of the technical roles to make sure that we cover how to do that. All right. Barbara Hovanik, and I'm so sorry if I butchered your name. Client Service Representative. This one's for you. So type in the job title, scan the resumes. I hope all of you are playing along. You do not need to watch my screen or my face in order to do this. I actually find it really fun, but I'm also a giant nerd, so I wouldn't be terribly surprised if you're not finding this as entertaining as I am. No, I'm kidding. This Client Service Representative is our first job. Customer Service Representative is our next one. No surprise there, right? I was expecting that one to come up. Let's see what else we've got. Customer Service Representative, Client Service Representative, which is what we are starting with. Customer Care Specialist. And then I'm going to add Customer Service Representative, because we've all heard that one, and I feel like that's the title that most people rely on first. All right. Let's test this out. Removing each of our previous ones. This is an easy way to confuse yourself if you accidentally leave other job titles in there. Trust me on that. Client Service Representative. All right. A Customer Care Specialist. We have a Customer Representative and Customer Service Representative. Oh, we just had a big jump. I'm sure all of you are seeing that big yellow line. I'm going to tell you how I handle some of that as well. So in this case, I'm a little biased. I secretly knew the answer. I'm not going to lie. I knew customer service representative would rank very high. It can also drive a little too much volume, full transparency. And so if you're in that scenario where maybe you have too much volume happening right now and you really want to get it more targeted, don't use the high volume title. Delete that. Find alternatives. Take the next one down or the next one down and try to find different ways to get more niche without cutting off your job title volume completely. So moving down here, of course, we're going to see that regional breakdown, but really what I want to see are the related queries because that's going to help me make my final decision. This isn't that big of a difference. It's not even 10 points. And so I think we need a little bit more context to be able to actually decide that we want to use this job title versus using a different one. All right. So this is where we start to kind of clear things out because what I found out is that if you search customer representative or search customer service representative, it's actually people looking for people to complain to. No joke. That's what these related queries are so helpful on. Look, Spirit, customer service number representative. Anyone else had to call Spirit Airlines before? I definitely have. Cash App, customer service. Metro PCS, customer service, right? We're definitely pulling more than just volume that's related to job titles. And that's why we need to distinguish this difference, right? If they're searching for this, then that's actually not the job title you want to post because you know that the majority of search volume on that is actually looking for something different than a job. That's why it's so important to check the queries and make sure that they're related to work. So in this case, I would actually remove both of these options and go back to one of the lower details to see if I could get one that had more detail as far as those related queries. All right, so Amber, great question. Amber just asked, wouldn't the results still pull volume if you interweave other job titles into your posting? I know we're focused on what people search, but you could use all these terms in your posting strategically. In theory, that works, but what actually happens is that we create what I call a transformer job title, and it's when we just start slapping words on the end because the title is the #1 match indicator for search. I would love to tell you that job boards are so much smarter and they can make all of these matching algorithms when you search a title, but truly they center on job title and related families. I've actually consulted a lot of those companies. They do one-to-one match on the job title first, and then anything that doesn't one-to-one match that criteria starts on a 100 to 0% match. And so you're really throwing yourself in there if you're not giving yourself an advantage, let me be clear, if you add postings. Let me give a really great example. Like I've seen sales, right? So in the sales job, let's say we call them a sales representative. Great. Then on the next job, they try to put the marketing in the job title and they'll say sales representative, demand generation marketing. I'm making this up. But what happens is we just start adding and adding. And the reality is that if no one is searching it, we're not going to get that one-to-one match. And so by continuing, you can add the topics all you want in the content, but I imagine that would create more confusion for the job seeker. I'd lean into the job title that you know drives the most volume. And then if there is an internal job title or some alternative that you need to explain, you do that during the first interview. You don't need to explain it 12 different ways throughout the post. All right, I love it. You knew the engineers would get here soon, right? And I'm seeing a few of those examples come through. So let's jump on to those. I'm guessing WMS implementation is a tech job. We're going to find out. And this is the easiest way. WMS implementation resume. That's warehouse management. Okay. So that's the AWS, not WMS. Gotta love acronyms, right? Let's do this one. I already clicked on it. So this one is for you, Felix, the WMS implementation. So WSM implementation, we have an implementation portfolio manager. Now, clearly, I don't know a ton about this job, so please correct me if this is totally off. And a implementation specialist. All right, and we're just going to go back and do the exact same thing. Now, what I'm interested to see on this job specifically, implementation, is if that acronym pulls search results because it is so specific. And the answer is it does not. So my first ask to you, Felix, as you're testing this, knowing that I don't know a ton about the job, is that I would spell it out, just do the spelled out version versus the simple version first. Then look at some of the alternatives where you can remove or add simpler words, like a warehouse implementation specialist. The less you know about the job, the more searching and digging you're going to need to do, because you need to understand what the most important part is. That doesn't necessarily dictate the job title, but it does have a strong influence on everything you're doing as you're digging through those resumes, right? You're looking through all of these details, and if those resumes don't match your query, you probably don't have the first job title right. And that has to be right. If I search this and I hit resumes and I don't find anything we're related to, I can't find alternative job titles because I wouldn't hire any of these people. So remember, this strategy works forward and backward, both for selecting a new job title, but also seeing if yours is wrong and you're not posting the right job title in the first place as far as what needs to happen. All right, so let's get those technical jobs. I'm just going to steal Steve Levy's. Appreciate you playing along, Steve. DevOps engineer resume. It's funny because you know they're technical roles because all of these resumes look way different than anyone else. So when we look up a DevOps engineer, we need to look at all the other pieces. So let's do engineer versus manager. And Steve, if you want to give me job titles that are the same, we could even just do engineer and see what happens, or lead DevOps engineer. All right. Let's plug all of these in and use this as our technical examples to see what we can do. Oh, perfect. Or DevOps consultant, since we're already in that category. Perfect. That was an excellent question from Bianca, and I am happy to answer. So let's remove these queries. And let's type in DevOps consultant. I spelled it wrong, and that would be a reason why there are no results coming in. Okay. DevOps engineer, DevOps manager. So, Bianca, thank you so much for asking about roles outside of the US, because you can use this tool when researching roles outside of the US. All you'll need to do is come to this section right here. Let me zoom right in so everyone can see this nice and big on your screen. If you click right here where it says United States, you can select your country. And of course, my internet is not that fast, but you can go worldwide as well. So if the job truly is global, select worldwide instead of United States. They can go down to the smallest islands I've never even heard of, to find out these search results. The next thing you can do is broaden your time period. So let's say you're not getting results and you know this is a real job title. Bump it out. Let's bump out to 5 years. Let's bump out previous. You can create custom time ranges if you know that there was a big shift in the industry where they actually changed the job titles. You can go into category specific. So let's say this is within a specific industry or area. You can go deep and look at these search results within a different category, even beauty pageants, it looks like. And then start to looking at these. This is probably your least useful drop-down option. So make sure that you remember that you have those alternatives to dig in and start to get a little bit of a different selection criteria when you're looking outside of the country, when maybe you're not getting those results, or you want to find data that is really specific to a category. So here's a quick breakdown for the DevOps consultant versus the DevOps engineer. So, yep. So the reason, Bianca, if I was seeing the DevOps consultant not pulling anything, I would, again, let's just back out. Let's see what happens. So we're seeing that DevOps engineer is more popular than the DevOps consultant and has been shared a lot more over time. So my first thought to you, just right off the bat, is that maybe it's DevOps engineer consultant, right? And adding that last bit or clarifying this consulting role within the content instead of in the job title. It's okay that there's not search results here. That's a directional for us. It doesn't say that there's no results or that no one searches it. It just says that we might want to think about an alternative. We might want to consider a different merge, a different search. Related queries, right on point. Jobs, resume, certifications, all of that is directly related to the job. And when it comes to tech, make sure you're asking people on your team. One of my favorite ways to do that is actually to ask your hiring managers, what have your job titles been, right? Who's on your team? What are their job titles? Where do they come from? And starting to understand some of those in addition to what your current job titles are to really narrow down and niche down to make sure you get the job title right. And yes, your job title can be different. The one you post can be different than your internal job title. All you need to do is explain that difference in the very first interview. And here's how you're going to do it. Hi there. I just want to let you know that we have internal job titles and we also use marketing job titles to get smart people like you to apply and find our jobs. I want you to take a look at this job description. It has our internal title and all of the details on it that you can do this job. That's it. We don't need to over-explain. We don't need to super deep dive into all of the job titles. Just explain that there is a discrepancy between that marketing job title and the internal job description or something that they would keep on file. All right. So I have been going back and forth, jumping through all of these screens, reading through your questions. Does anyone have a question that's not specifically related to the job title or an industry, or did you run into any issues as you were practicing this research? Is there anything anyone learned that surprised them as they were going through and doing their own searches today? I'm just going to open it up. Feel free to jump in anytime. I'm going to keep researching and giving all of you these examples. If any of those questions come in, I will be right back. And we have an amazing team monitoring the chat to make sure that you're getting the attention you deserve. So one of the other jobs I saw posted, a caregiver educator. I love that. No, God knows we need a lot of those right now. A caregiver educator that must be an RN. Hannah, this is for you. All right, so I think our first issue here, and I'm sure if you're watching along and can read any of this text, is that we are getting resume results that are completely unrelated to that job title. That's a problem. That means we need to take a step back. So as I'm looking through this, I have some experience with this. Maybe we're looking at a clinical nurse educator, right? You mentioned that they had to be an RN. Maybe it's a nurse educator. And so let's say that Hannah and I were sitting down and doing a job post rewrite and working through these job titles. We would keep looking at, so let's try nurse educator resume, because at this point I don't really have a good data set to say, if I search this, I find people who are qualified. So we have just a plain old nurse educator. Here we go, a registered nurse educator. It's starting to sound a little bit more about like the job that you offered in the first place. So let's start there. All right, a clinical nurse educator. My internet's like, you really want me to work on demand? Who do you think you are? All right, and just a plain old nurse educator. And then finally, the caregiver educator, which you submitted in the first place. Although I will tell you that if I find that kind of data up front, as far as not getting the relevant searches, I very rarely will actually include it in this search. So typically I would tell you don't put it in there. I'm going to add it simply for curiosity. All right. And finally, caregiver educator. Sorry, everyone. The internet can only keep up so much as we live demo, that's for sure. All right, as expected, caregiver educator isn't really registering across these titles. And so again, Hannah, you need to go back and look at those resumes and see which one most closely aligns with the kinds of resumes you're hoping to get. That is going to help you, but right now I'm seeing nurse educator is probably a really good place to start. We have pretty good coverage across the US, and we're seeing those related jobs. So we're seeing the salary reference, and that is enough. Even one is a good direction. Again, this is directional. It's not a decision point. It's not going to tell you exactly what to do or anything like that, right? This is going to help you with that. All right. So QC analyst and quality control analyst. Great. So Barbara, let's add those in and see. My guess on, so what Barbara asked is they said, I got a result with little data. The comparison was QC analyst, and quality control analyst. I didn't think it was niche. So what I'm noticing is we have quality control analyst resume. My guess is maybe we just try quality control. I don't know a ton about all of the layers or details of your job. We don't have a ton of time to be able to dial into all of that, but scanning through these very quickly. I want to try doing it without the word analyst. And that, Barbara, that's what I would do next, is that if you're really not getting great results on either of yours, and if assuming if you do not feel confident about that job title, you're not getting enough search or you're not getting enough applications to actually be able to flow, I want you to go back and just remove one of the layers. So QC analyst and quality control analyst, the commonality here is the word analyst. So we're going to remove that from the search and be able to understand the comparison of something a little more broad, and then we can go more niche. So the more you know about the job, the more informed you're going to be. And the last step is to go to people who actually have the job and then ask them, would you apply to this job? Or you can, instead of adding in your own bias, I suggest even asking them like, hey, what do you search if you're looking for this job? What would you type into the internet? And getting that answer across a few people, or even having them ask a few friends, is a really good way of understanding if your job title is correct. All right. So I realize that I've done the exact same process quite a few times. So I want to take a step back again and just give everybody a chance to ask any of their questions. So if you're thinking about job titles, if you ran into any issues, I would love to hear from you across any of the tabs. I'm slowly making my way across. I keep missing some of the comments. So if you are in the event chat or the stage chat, wherever you are, tag someone like Danielle or David and make sure that we know that your question is there. How many of you actually had a philosophy or a process for posting job titles prior to today? Just out of curiosity, you know, I was working with a company earlier this week and they said we were using SEO optimized job titles. I said, okay, how do you optimize them for SEO? And they said, I don't know. They didn't actually know what they were doing to optimize. And so this is a really great opportunity for you to show off your expertise with your managers, to show your hiring managers that you understand how search works, how to get candidates over to your job posting, and make sure that you can actually get the applications that you want to see. All right. I'm slowly browsing through each of the questions and learning how all of you are thinking about this. I know that we're coming up on time. Dave, I realized I was kind of going through the same process, and I just want to give everybody a chance to maybe ask one more question or head over to that networking tab where they can have the next conversation. And Bianca, that's exactly it. So the message from Bianca, if you see it, is the expectation is you do what works. And that's exactly it. If you're getting qualified applications, that means it's working. And by qualified, I mean, in theory, when you scan the resume, they could do the job. And let's make sure that that's possible. And that they, right? So what I mean here by make sure that's possible is that if you're posting it and you're not getting anything, you need to shift. If you are applying and you're not actually tracking if the application was qualified in the first place, go back to the job title. Always second guess your assumptions, because I can tell you right now, I've been surprised over and over again. I have done this a million times. I've written so many job titles. Like I said, when I started this whole thing, I wrote 600 for free to start out this very weird ride. And so it's really, really important that you make sure to get these job titles right, that you check your bias, that you check your internal job titles, and make sure that you actually get search volume for the projects you're hoping to get. Barbara, I love to see that. Barbara shared that our process is if we don't get good hits, then we change the title to see if it makes a difference. And that's great marketing philosophy 101, right? If it doesn't work, fix it. And the job title, honestly, it would be the first thing that I would change every time. You know, I run an entire team of job post writing experts. We always start with the most simple element. The job title will always be the most simple element for you to understand what's working and what's not, and to truly have a test in hand that can help you do this, have this conversation and make sure that it's right. I really encourage teams, and during training, we have a lot of conversations about this is using that Google Trends page as an education page with your hiring manager. You know, if you're running into a hiring manager who is convinced that job title has to be whatever they decided it has to be, use Google Trends to show them why or why not that may be a bad or good decision, right? You want to show them these data points because that's how we convey expertise. For so long, we wrote job postings and everyone was working on the operation that most people just didn't know what they were doing. And so ultimately, when we're thinking about the job, we need to write something that convinces your hiring managers that you know what you're doing. And the job title is the first impression. You know, earlier I saw a few comments going back and forth about the difference between certain software jobs, and that, you know, Richard would even use some of those titles as a way to push people away because they aren't the same, right? So this is your way of showing that your manager that you actually understand that you can apply that knowledge and that you are using it to market and attract candidates for their job.